Desperate Housewives Gabrielle Solis has a textbook rags to riches story.
Since her modeling days in New York, Gabrielle had developed a taste for rich food and rich men.
She left home at 15 and clawed her way up as a model before marrying her rich husband Carlos. Then as the show continues, the rags to riches cycle repeats for Gaby. She and Carlos lose everything and then get it back again. So what is it about Gabrielle that makes her such a prime candidate for financial glow-up? And what does her arc tell us about when you've moved up in the world? Is it all glamour, or is there a catch? Having grown up incredibly poor, Gabrielle realized early that if she wanted wealth, her best bet would be marrying a certain type of man. But in the pilot episode, we're told that when she got engaged, she wasn't completely disillusioned. She believed that Carlos was a romantic.
Carlos, who worked in mergers and acquisitions, proposed on their third date. Gabrielle was touched when tears welled up in his eyes.
However, she quickly realized that to Carlos, being married to a supermodel was just part of keeping up appearances. She was little more than a trophy wife to him.
But she soon discovered this happened every time Carlos closed a big deal.
Despite knowing that, she still feels like she needs Carlos, or someone like him, to keep enjoying the lifestyle she likes. But she's still drawn in by sexual attraction, and even has an affair with her teenage gardener, John. Early on, she acknowledges that she married Carlos for the wrong reasons.
He promised to give me everything I've ever wanted. Turns out I wanted all the wrong things.
But as the first season progresses, we see a steely edge to Gaby. Although John thinks they have a future, she knows that she'll never leave Carlos, because ultimately being with someone for love doesn't fulfill her very real need for financial comfort.
Okay, sure, we'd be poor at first, but we'd be happy.
I've tried poor but happy. Guess what? Wasn't that happy? You embezzled $10 million?
For Gaby, money is always the most important thing. Being rich and having expensive things is basically her biggest turn-on, and she'll do pretty much anything to maintain the life she's become accustomed to, including sending Carlos to jail if it means they get to keep their luxury Wisteria Lane home.
You said that you were fine with selling the house.
That was before I knew we could trade a couple of months in prison to keep it.
Because she grew up poor, she knows what she has to do to survive, and she's great at reincarnating herself. She turns her talents to training children for beauty pageants, or personal shopping, anything to bring in money when she needs it. She also isn't afraid to use her assets to get what she wants, namely her good looks and amazing body.
Can't dress for church if you want to move the merch.
Gaby.
Gotta shake your rear to get them to buy the gear.
Gaby.
You want to sell some knits? You better flash.
Gaby!
And as materialistic as she may be, her survival instinct remains strong. When Carlos goes blind and she's head of the household, looking after their 2 kids, she's willing to sell a lot of their possessions, desperately trying to make ends meet. One of the most important parts of Gaby's arc is learning what she won't do for a life of luxury. She becomes uncomfortable when the family stays with Carlos's massage client, Mrs. Hildebrand, who starts trying to get too close to her family, which shows us how much having children changed her.
Grandma. She told them to call her Grandma?
Yeah, that's why we're leaving.
She'd prefer to protect her girls than be pampered in Mrs. Hildebrand's beautiful home. But still, the period of hardship they experience doesn't completely reshape her values. While she shoulders the family's needs for years due to Carlos's blindness, when he gets his sight back, she rejects his desire to do something worthy and instead pushes him towards a more lucrative role so she can get back to the lifestyle she wants.
I'm gonna work with the blind.
Oh, great. And what's the signing bonus for that? A couple pencils?
And Gaby never takes her mind off what she wants. Even when she seemingly has everything she's ever wanted, she remains aspirational, always striving for more.
Not schlepping way over there just so she can be with those people.
Those people? Don't you mean our people?
Our people are the rich private school people.
In order to fit into Fairview, Gabrielle hides or even totally rejects aspects of her identity, to the point that her daughter Juanita grows up thinking she's white rather than Latina. This leads Carlos to accuse Gaby of being self-hating.
Deny it all you want, you are a self-hating Mexican.
Oh yeah? Well, you're a self-wiping Mexican.
What does that mean?
It was usually played for laughs, but throughout the seasons, we saw time and time again that Gaby was willing to renounce even the most integral parts of herself if it meant getting the upper hand or getting what she wanted.
There's an intruder breaking into my home. Can you tell them to come armed? I think he's Mexican.
It was the show's attempt to satirically unpack a very real phenomenon, where to fit into white society, some people of color feel that they must sand down as much of themselves as possible to fit in and become accepted, which Gaby takes to an extreme. Gaby associates her roots with poverty and her family with the abuse she suffered as a child, so it's easier for her to bury her heritage and her history.
So this is it.
Yep, I was wrong. It can be worse than I remembered.
She doesn't talk about why she needed a rags to riches rise, keeping the details vague and preferring to focus on the more glamorous aspects of her past.
You left home when you were only 15.
I left because I had to. My stepfather was not a nice man. My mother didn't care about me.
But while she chooses to play down aspects of her identity to fit in with her white neighbors, she can't account for the behavior of other people. When she marries politician Victor, she discovers that he's been using her for gain, playing on her Latina heritage for votes.
Marrying Gaby is the smartest thing you've ever done. With her bringing in the Latino vote, the governor's mansion's as good as yours.
It's a moment that shows that even Gaby, who has a steely edge and is determined to make her way to the top, isn't immune to being used herself. While Gaby, like every housewife, certainly has her share of negative characteristics, one positive one, and one that was integral to her being able to force her way into the life she wanted, is her ability to believe in herself. In early seasons, this comes across as vain and self-centered, to the point that even after she has grown in the later seasons, the other housewives can't help but remind her of how she used to appear to them before they got to know her.
Oh, I never bragged.
You once called your face proof of God's existence.
But the reality is that Gaby comes from a family who didn't support her and even abused her, in a place where she never felt valued. She learned early on that she had to back herself, because otherwise no one else would. So although she sometimes seems abrasive and egotistical, over the show's run we come to realize that she's a product of her past, of having to be her own biggest cheerleader.
Look at this bone structure. This face is a cash cow, and if you don't have the vision to take advantage of that, then maybe I'm at the wrong agency.
What's more, because she's smart, she's able to articulate her importance to other people, convincing Carlos, for example, that he no longer has to worry about her cheating on him years after her indiscretions with John.
For the past 11 years, I have stood beside you when you were poor and blind and knocked me up twice. At this point in our marriage, if you still feel the need to test me, then you're the one who has failed.
She knew red was her color. She knew diamonds went with everything. And she knew men were all the same.
Gabrielle hasn't had an easy life, and navigating those difficulties forced her to hone a very important skill, being able to read people, particularly men. But that doesn't mean that she hasn't been burned by trusting some people on her journey from rags to riches. In the early seasons, she reiterates that she never wants children, and yet she's constantly dragged into an argument about having them with Carlos, to the point that he actually messes with her birth control and makes her fall pregnant.
You knew the one thing I didn't want was a child, and you still tricked me into getting pregnant.
She's sometimes so intent on getting what she wants that she forgets that Carlos is working towards what he wants, too. One of Gaby's biggest storylines happens when she confronts her stepfather, who abused her as a child. She started the healing process in therapy, but when he begins to appear threateningly in the Solis' garden, she takes matters into her own hands, threatening him.
Come here, please. Who are you kidding?
I'm not the little girl who doesn't know how to defend herself anymore.
What's going on here?
I'm trying to think of a reason not to kill you.
Gabrielle knows that what she has now, not just her wealth, but her husband and family, is precious, and she'll do whatever it takes to keep it safe. While their road to friendship was rocky, to say the least, in the end, Gabrielle's friends are actually one of the richest parts of her life, becoming the support system she never had.
The point is, good friends share more than just gossip and brunch. They share enemies too, so are you with me or not? Of course we're with you.
And they allow her to be herself and delight in the less conventional parts of her personality. Gaby is a straight talker, but her friends accept that. They even roll with it. For example, when Lynette has cancer, Gaby tells her she needs to try to be more attractive for Tom, and rather than being offended, Lynette takes it on board.
When was the last time you were in a bar and heard a guy turn to his friend and say, "Hey, check out the soul in that girl"?
What are you saying?
I'm saying men are visual.
The fact that Gaby found her people on Wisteria Lane meant that her fluctuating wealth didn't matter as much as it might have done when she was younger and so fixated on money. Through all of the chaos and drama, the housewives are able to build surprisingly tight-knit bonds that mean they'll be there for each other through anything, even murder. When Carlos takes out Gaby's abusive stepfather and the pair are panicking about what to do, he was unarmed and Gaby had never reported him to the police, so it will be hard to convince the police it was self-defense. Her friends happen to walk in. But instead of freaking out or turning her in, they're all down to help Gaby, and Carlos cover the whole thing up.
I killed the son of a bitch who hurt my wife. If I have to go to prison, I will.
That's not gonna happen.
They might have all spent the show fighting about wealth and status, but at the end of the day, their friendship matters more than anything else. Gaby's first rags to riches story happens off-screen, but then she experiences a humbling fall back into poverty, and we get to watch her build herself back up as the show progresses.
And look at you, your clothes, your hair. Carlos might be blind, but the rest of us aren't.
I had 2 children.
For what? Breakfast?
A lot of the reasons why it takes her a while to regain her position in high society are because she's actually becoming a better person as she does so. She decides to work at her marriage, and both she and Carlos become kinder and more well-rounded as a result. They go through so much together, and having their children shows Gaby and the audience a different side of her personality, where it isn't just money that matters. She feels humiliated to have taken a fall.
Now it's official. I've lost everything. First, our money, then my figure, now the last shreds of our social standing.
But ultimately, this fall shows her what really matters.
We have work that supports us, and we have 2 beautiful little girls that love us more than ice cream. I've never been happier in my life.
Are you serious?
And when she does claw her way back up the ladder to wealth again, she's a happier person as a result of her personal growth, just as much as the money. That's The Take. Click here to watch a video we think you'll love, or here to check out a whole playlist of awesome content. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications. And make sure to subscribe to our Patreon for exclusive new videos.